Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for First Class Holidays Around the World Week. We're excited to have you with us as we celebrate over 30 years of unforgettable journeys and showcase the incredible destinations and trusted supplier partners that make it all possible. This week is all about inspiration, connection, and highlighting the very best of what First Class Holidays has to offer. I'm now going to hand you over to Natalie from ViaRail. Please note this session is being pre-recorded, but if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them all. And if you need anything else, feel free to reach out to us at sales@firstfchholidays.com. And I hope you enjoy the session.
Thanks, Lorna. Hopefully I am now sharing my screen and we'll put the presentation on for you. So as Lorna said, I'm Natalie and I'm the UK account manager for ViaRail. So ViaRail is the public rail network of Canada. So the map on the screen is the different routes that we offer. So we go all the way from Halifax on the east coast, all the way across to Vancouver and Prince Rupert on the west, and then as far north as Churchill on Hudson Bay. Now, all of our trains run year round. And I'm going to start on the East Coast and kind of work my way across, and hopefully we'll get everything done in this 30-minute session. So starting with the ocean train. So this is the pale blue route on the map, and it travels between Halifax in Nova Scotia through the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick and Quebec, all the way through to Montreal. Now that full journey Halifax to Montreal is 22 hours on board the train, so it's one night on board the train. Now, if your customers do want to stop along the route, they can do that. Probably the most popular place that people would want to visit on that route, if they're not hiring a car in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, is to do Quebec City. So if they want to travel on the ocean train, they can stop at Sainte-Foy, which is about 20 minutes away from Quebec City, spend some time in Quebec City, and then if they want to, they can pick up the corridor service, which is the train I'm going to talk about next, going all the way down to Montreal. Now that would make the journey Halifax to Sainte-Foy 19 hours. So it takes a short amount of time off of that journey. And it is actually better to do that if they are stopping in Sainte-Foy for Quebec City, going from Montreal round to Halifax, because your customers will be getting off the train late in the evening, whereas if they're going in the other direction, they will be getting off early hours of the morning, which means the hotel won't be ready and not everybody wants to get out that early. So the majority of people who are going to do that stop would stop going from Montreal around to Halifax, sorry. So the kind of scenery you're going to be seeing is everything from farmlands, forests. You can quite often see wildlife such as moose from the train. It follows the coastline along the St. Lawrence and then also around the very top of New Brunswick. And if you're lucky enough to go in early October, you'll get the full colours on this side of Canada, so the reds and the oranges. Now we do have economy class on board this train. Now economy class is just a seat in a normal train carriage. We generally only get people travelling from the UK who are just doing a small amount of that journey. So for example, from Halifax to Moncton, which is about 5 hours. Generally, if people are going to do the full overnight journey, they're going to want a bed on board. So that is when they would book Sleeper Plus. On the ocean, we have just one type of accommodation. So we have just a cabin for two. So there is a small single supplement if you do have a solo traveller. So the cabin in the daytime is a sofa, there's some storage, and then at night time it's converted to an upper and a lower bed. There is a ladder, it's just not shown in that picture. They don't have to climb up without a ladder. And then each of the cabins has a bathroom. So they all have a toilet and sink, and then some of them have a handheld shower head, which basically makes the area a wet room. Basic shower kits are included, which is towels and basic toiletries. So your customer doesn't have to worry about taking towels on board. Now the cabins on all of our sleeper trains are small, so your customer is basically just going to take on board what they need for the duration of their journey. So for this one, it's just the one night. For potentially the Canadian, it's up to 4 nights. So it's cabin bag like you would on a plane, and then your bigger luggage will get checked into a luggage car and it's labelled with whichever station your customer is going to be getting off at. So with a Sleeper Plus bedroom, you're going to get your meals included as well. So all the meals are served in the dining car. If your customers are on for the full journey, it's breakfast, lunch and dinner. We have a cook, not a chef, on board the Ocean, so it's kind of good airline quality food. The dining car fills up as people arrive, so your customers will be sitting with different people for each meal. Open sitting for breakfast, and then usually 2 sittings for lunch and 2 sittings for dinner, which is usually arranged at the time that your customer is checking in at the station. There is also a lounge car where your customers can buy extra food and drink from the kiosk, area to relax. Sometimes they have movies or TV programs on, and then there's magazines and a few games as well. Moving on to the corridor service. So this is probably the service that's most like the trains we have in this country, in the fact that they go numerous times a day, every day. One big difference is we don't oversell our trains. So if that train is full for the day, they stop selling tickets. So we never recommend the customers turn up. Obviously, if they're going to be booking through an agent, that's not going to be the case. But it's nice for customers to know that they're not going to have to get there super early and fight to be able to get on that train and find a seat. No matter whether they're in economy or business class, they are guaranteed a seat. So there's various different routes on this. So we've got Montreal to Ottawa, which is just 2 hours on board the train. Montreal to Quebec City is 3.5 hours. Quebec City to Ottawa is about 6.5 hours. Montreal to Toronto is about 5.5 hours, and Ottawa to Toronto is about 4.5, 5 hours. So these, as I said, are very much like the trains we have in this country, but obviously even in Canada, these are short distances, but in this country, they'll probably be considered longer distances. So we do have 2 classes. We have economy class, which just is a basic seat in a normal train carriage, pretty much exactly the same as the ones on the Ocean, apart from it's a 2-2 configuration. We then have business class, which I would highly recommend. So business class, you get 3 main benefits. You get access to the lounges at the station, all slightly different. This is the one at Toronto. Various different seating areas, magazines, newspapers. You get tea, coffee, soft drinks your customers can help themselves to. Dedicated member of staff, and also separate toilets, and the check-in time is a little less for business class as well. Then get a meal included on board. Now, various different options for each for the course. So there'll be probably 3 or 4 options for the main course, a salad and then a dessert. With lunch and dinner, this also includes alcohol as well. So alcohol's not included, and then they'll come around with tea and coffee after the meal as well. One additional extra, which has kind of been brought in the last year or so, is that the luggage allowance for business class is a lot better than for economy class. So with economy class, it's not about the weight of the bags, it's the sizes of the bags. So with economy class, you get a medium-sized bag, and with business class, you get a large-sized bag. To be honest, most people who are probably going to be going to Canada for longer than a short break are going to have that bigger bag. So therefore, generally the difference in cost between an economy class ticket plus the baggage or booking business class, which includes it, is very minimal. So always check that out. The baggage allowance is on the website, but if I remember, I'll try and add a link to the chat as well. So this is our new fleet. So most departures on the corridor have this fleet. So it's built by Siemens, very much a European style train. As I said, economy class is a 2-2 configuration, and then business class is a 2-1 configuration with a few 4-seaters as well. There's decent leg room, the seats are wide, there's a socket at every seat. It is a very good service. There's toilets in the majority of the carriages, and also enough luggage space, especially in business class, to put all your luggage as well. So moving on to the Canadian. This is probably our most famous train, and the one that most people have heard of, even though some people call it the Trans-Canadian, Toronto to Vancouver, but officially it is the Canadian. So the Canadian goes between Toronto and Vancouver, going through some of the major cities in in Canada, including Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Jasper. Now, this train goes twice a week in each direction, all year round, and covers 2,765 miles. And if you do it from Toronto to Vancouver or vice versa in one go, it's 4 nights on board the train. Now, your customers can do those 4 nights all in one go. They can split the journey along the way if they want to, or they can do just a small sector of the train. If they are going to split the journey along the way, they have to be mindful that each place, because it only goes twice a week, you're going to be in each place for 3 or 4 nights. As I said, you can do just small sector. So the most common small sector we have is either Vancouver to Jasper or Jasper to Vancouver. A little kind of information, a kind of secret. There is usually more space going Jasper to Toronto and Jasper to Vancouver than there is going in the other direction. So departing Jasper in whatever direction usually has more space than going in the other direction. So if you do have a customer who wants to do a small sector of it and it doesn't work as availability, consider turning the itinerary around because there might be space in the other direction. Now, if you're traveling from Toronto, you'll first go through the lakes and forests of Ontario. You'll then move through the prairies of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and then you will go through the mountains once you are just outside of Jasper. Always scheduled to go through the mountains in daylight hours, slightly different timings depending on which way you're going, but you are always scheduled to go in daylight hours. So this is some of the other scenery you'll see. You'll see that train looks fairly long, but in summer, sometimes our train can be up to 30 carriages long. In winter, it is a slightly smaller train. We have less bedrooms and less lounge cars on because we have less need for it, but also we are doing a heritage restoration program at the minute, where in winter we are taking some of those carriages to be refurbed, because these carriages are from the 1950s. So the Canadian is just celebrating its 70th birthday this year. So all the carriages are still from the 1950s. They're very retro on the outside. They've just been refurbed in the inside, and they just need that little bit of maintenance. So on this train, and also our Skeena train, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can see wildlife from. It does go slow enough that you can probably take a picture and it's not just a blur and you're like, that was a bear when you get home. So you can see bears, moose, eagles, coyotes. So there's lots of different wildlife that you can see if you're lucky enough on the train as well. As I said, all of our trains run in all year round, so winter is becoming a lot more popular for us. It's a great, safe way for customers who aren't confident driving with snow chains in the bad weather to be able to get between different places in Canada. You're nice and warm on the train and the winter wonderland is going past outside. Northern Lights can also be seen from a couple of our trains. So I would normally have said just in winter. However, last May when we had the Aurora here, they also got it in Canada, and there was a massive group of the product managers from various different tour operators who were on the train, and they had an amazing Aurora's show while they're on board the train. So there's various different accommodation types on board the Canadian. Now we do have economy class, which is exactly the same as the Ocean, so just a seat. We don't generally get that many people from the UK booking that. Occasionally we do get people who are just doing Jasper to Vancouver, for example, because they see it as no different to flying to Australia in a seat, or people who are traveling, say, between Edmonton and Jasper or Saskatoon and Jasper. So the smaller sectors, not necessarily ones who are doing a couple of nights or the full journey. So the majority of people would book Sleeper Plus. Now, Sleeper Plus is built into 3 different types of accommodation. So we have what's called a berth, which is the yellow on the map. We have cabins for 2, which is the green, and we have cabins for 1, which is the purple. So that's the makeup of a normal train carriage on board the Canadian. You also have 2 toilets and also a shower with a lockable dressing area as well. Now, the cabin for 2 is probably the most popular that we sell from the UK. So in the daytime is on the left-hand side, so you have 2 seats, you have your own toilet and sink, and then at nighttime is converted to an upper and a lower bed. And then you have the shower that I just mentioned. That is the only place that they can shower if they have Sleeper Plus, is that shower with the lockable dressing area. You can have what's called a suite. So this is basically 2 cabins for 2. So in the daytime you have the wall taken down, so it's 2 cabins for 2 joined into 1. In the daytime you have the 4 seats, obviously you have the 2 toilets and 2 sinks. And then at night time you have 2 lowers and 2 upper beds. This is great, obviously, for families or groups of friends that are traveling together. We then have cabins for one. So on the Canadian, there are no single supplements. They are politely, I would say, compact. So in the daytime, that is your seat. And then you can see that handle at the top, that pulls down at nighttime to create your bed. Now, the one issue you have is that you can see what looks like a footrest, which in the mirror you can see is opposite the seat. That is a footrest during the daytime, but it can also be your toilets. There is a toilet underneath that. Now, at night time, when the bed comes down, that toilet is covered, and we do not recommend customers putting that bed back up because they are quite heavy, and obviously the majority of people who are traveling on the Canadian are probably that little bit older. And we have had some incidents where people have hurt themselves, or even one that got trapped underneath it. So we recommend using the toilets in the carriage at night time. Some people don't use that toilet the entire time because they don't like the fact that it's not in a separate room, and that is also absolutely fine. We then have what's called a berth. So a cabin for one or a cabin for two can be anywhere from about £1,100 to £2,200 per person. This is about a third cheaper than that. So this is the cheapest way of being able to have a bed on board the Canadian. So you have one person sitting either side during the daytime, and then at night time it is converted to an upper and a lower bed with a curtain between you and the aisle. So they are semi-private sleeping area. They're actually the widest beds in Sleeper Plus. They are wider than either the cabins for two or cabins for one. But you can see that that's the corridor that it goes down. So it is a very narrow corridor, but some people prefer that than having two cabins for one, for example. We get a lot of older customers who one of them can't climb up to the top bunk in a cabin for two, but they don't want two separate cabins for one. What you can do is book two lower cabins and request for them to be near each other, so they'll be in the same carriage and they'll have two lower berths next to each other. Now, we also have prestige class. So we have 13 of these on each departure. They sell out extremely quickly. Usually the day that they go on sale, they are pretty much sold out in high season. So in the daytime, it is a corner sofa. The cabin is 50% larger than a standard cabin for two. And then at nighttime, it's converted to a small double bed. There's lots of storage. You have a cooler, a TV loaded with TV programs and films, and also your customers would have their own shower as well as the toilet and sink. There's also various different service cars on the train. So you get all your meals included and they're all served in the dining car. Again, the dining car is filled up as people arrive, so your customers will be sitting with different people for each meal. Open sitting for breakfast, and then depending on how big the train is, either 2 or 3 sittings for lunch and dinner, which again your customers will choose at the time of check-in. There's usually a separate desk to be able to go and choose your dining time as well. The food on board the Canadian is a step above any of our other trains. We have a chef on board rather than a cook. It's all silver service. Everything is cooked fresh to order. The menu changes every single day, various different options for each course. There's always a vegetarian option, which I believe is also now vegan as well, and we can cater for other dietary requirements as long as we know in advance. So it is truly amazing what they do on very small kitchens. A lot of people liken this to a cruise on rails. We get a lot of people combine with a cruise from Vancouver up to Alaska, or even they do the Eastern Seaboard from either Montreal and Quebec once they've got into Toronto. So we also have lounge cars like this. So you quite often find people playing games in here. There's various different games that you can buy. Sometimes they vote on what films they want on board. We have various different activities on board. So wine, beer, cheese tasting, bingo even. So there's usually a couple of things each day that is happening in one of the lounge cars. So if your customer does want to take part in it, they can go along and join, and they're all free of charge. Or if they don't want to, there is another lounge car which doesn't necessarily have something on, or potentially they've got their own bedroom to go and sit in if they want some privacy as well. Now this is one of the other lounge cars. This is the park car. So this is the carriage at the very back of the train. So you have a seating area and a very nice cocktail bar here. And then down the corridor on the right-hand side, you have what's called the Bullet Lounge, because it looks like a silver bullet from the outside. So this is the only place on the train that you can obviously get that back view. We don't have an outdoor area and you can't open the windows, but you can get some nice shots out of that back window as well as in the observation domes. So scattered throughout the train above most of the lounge cars is one of our dome cars. So it's about 7 steps, I think, up to the observation dome. Customers can go up there whenever they want. They're very good in the fact that it's not like a sun lounger in an all-inclusive. You can't just put a book on and leave it and go for a meal. You can pop to the toilet, you can pop to your cabin to collect something, but they're not going to allow you to reserve a seat in the dome car for the entire time you're on the journey. Now, this is just a little video to show you what the Canadian is like. Okay, moving on to the Skeena train, or the Jasper to Prince Rupert. So in my opinion, this is probably Canada's best kept secret. Now, this is our train for mountain scenery. So it travels between Jasper to Prince George, overnights in a hotel in Prince George, and then on to Prince Rupert, or vice versa. So it's 1 day in the Rockies, and then 1 day in the coastal mountain ranges in northern BC. This train goes 3 times a week in each direction, all year round. The kind of scenery you're going to be seeing is obviously mountains, trestle bridges, forests, Mount Robson. It's called the Skeena train because it follows the Skeena River. Again, this is the train that I said you could pretty much guaranteed to see wildlife in summer. So I think someone who I know went on this train and they saw 20 bears in the 2-day journey. And they did get some really good pictures as well, but they saw other wildlife as well. Serves very small communities, so this is really important for the First Nations and Indigenous people in this area. Serves communities as small as 2-10 people. Even if there's not a station, this train will stop anywhere en route to let people on and off. So you literally just see people get off the train, walk through the forest, and that is how they get to their house. Likewise, you'll just see the train slow down and they potentially stop and wait for somebody who is meant to be getting on the train. Just to prove a bit of wildlife, in winter as well, we've got a elk, I think. I don't think that's quite a moose. Again, travels all year round, so we do get a lot of people combining this train with winter activities, whether that be ski or non-ski. And because it does stop anywhere en route, it can stop to let people on and off in more remote areas to do some of these activities, for example, if they're doing a tour. So we have just economy class on this train, so you get a dedicated seat in a normal train carriage, but then we do have one of the unrefurbished park cars at the back, so it doesn't quite look like the same as the one on the Canadian. So you have the lounge car at the bottom, the Bullet Lounge, and then above it you will have an observation dome as well. Now this is first come, first serve. The majority of people who are doing this journey are locals. So you will find that most people who are in the observation dome are the small amount of tourists that are on board this train. The locals don't really care. This is their commute. They see it once, twice a month when they're going in and out of town, if not more. So you do meet a lot of interesting characters, both locals, but also the staff on all of our trains have usually worked with Veer for a really long time, but especially on this route, some of them have worked 20, 40 years, as they have amazing stories about the area and they will happily tell you about it. The last train I want to talk about is Winnipeg to Churchill. So this, if you watch Race Across the World, is the train that featured on that. So it goes between Winnipeg and Churchill twice a week in each direction all year round. From Winnipeg up to Thompson you have lakes and forests, and then past Thompson, it is Arctic tundra. So again, this is very important for First Nations and Indigenous people, and again, we'll stop anywhere en route to let people on and off. My colleague in Canada, when she was on the train a few years ago, an entire funeral procession, including the coffin, got on board this train, and that is how they were getting to their burial ground, and they were having part of the wake on board the train. And she said it was one of the most interesting experiences she's ever had on a train, which you don't necessarily expect to get a coffin on board the train. Now, the three most popular times we get people from the UK going up on the train is July for beluga whales. So obviously all the belugas come into the mouth of the Hudson River to breed. Then in winter you will get northern lights. So peak northern light season is usually Jan and March, but also if you're going end of October, beginning of November, you will get the polar bears as well. Most people will probably do the train in one direction and then fly the other way, because it is 2 days and 2 nights to get up there, so it is quite a lot to do that in both directions. One issue we do have is on this train we only have 19 sleeping spaces, and it is very much a basic train. Minimal food service. We do recommend people taking on food for the majority of that time because the food offering is very, very basic. No observation domes, so it is purely just either a bed or a berth, or some people even just book a seat. But sleeping spaces, whether that be berths, cabins for 1, 2, and I think we do have a cabin for 3 on that route, is just 19 sleeping spaces. Now that's a really brief overview of VRL. I'm always around, so you can either email me, you can join our agent Facebook page, or I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat now. Thank you very much for your time.